Okay, well, let's go ahead and start. So I, Chair Schmidt, now call the Building Code Structures Board of August 9th, 2023 to order. The time now is 9:44 a.m. Nathan, could you please call the roll?
Chair Schmidt.
Here.
Vice-chair Dykeman.
Present.
Stephen Forster.
Present.
Brenda Hartzog is excused. Gary Heikkinen.
Present.
Marshall McGrady.
Here.
Randy Samuelson did not hear a response from him. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me go ahead and ask members if they have, board members, if they have any changes to the agenda or the order of business. Okay, hearing none, then I will go ahead and rule the agenda and the order of business approved. Okay, next action is approval of the draft board meeting minutes of February 1st, 2023. Unless there are any changes, let me just ask real quick, or amendments to those minutes. Hearing none, I will go ahead and rule the draft minutes of February 1st, 2023 as final. All right. Note of order for business that the date of our next regularly scheduled meeting is November 1st, 2023. All right. Next order of business is we have a special guest today that we are bidding a formal farewell to and thank you, and that is former board member, amongst other things, Eric Sandoval. So Eric, welcome back.
Thanks, Chair Eric Schmidt. I'm a little under the weather today, so I wasn't able to make it into the office there, but appreciate the invitation today.
Absolutely. Well, we wanted to take a moment and really, again, acknowledge your service and your commitment to everything that you've been involved with over these many years, and certainly the service to the Building Code Structures Board. So I do have something I want to read for the good of the order here, and then certainly welcome other board members to chime in any additional thoughts and welcome any thoughts from you. So for everybody here, so what you may or may not know is Eric Sandoval was first confirmed to the Building Code Structures Board for a 4-year term that began July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2019 in the representing the architect engineer position. Eric served as a member of the board until he was nominated for chair, having no objections or no other nominations on November 7th, 2018. Then in July of 2019, Eric was confirmed for a second 4-year term on the Building Codes Structures Board. He chaired all of the meetings successfully until he willingly stepped down from the position on January 26th of 2022 to allow other members to have the same opportunity and experience he had chairing the board. Eric was also unanimously voted to sit on the Construction Industry Energy Board, the CIEB, as a representation from the Building Code Structures Board on January 26th of 2022, replacing a leaving member until Eric formally resigned from the Building Code Structures Board and CIEB May of 2023, 1 month prior to his end of his second 4-year term. In addition to his years of service on the board, Eric sat on several code review committees and discussed a variety of issues with staff and helped find solutions, which is everything that he brings to the table. He had an active role in the adoption processes for both the 2019 and 2022 iterations of the OSSC and was instrumental in bringing several clarifying amendments to our codes. On behalf of the board members who served the time as Eric and staff, our genuine appreciation and thanks for his significant contributions all go out to him with his many years of service on the board. So Eric, again, thank you for everything, and wanted to kind of see if others have some additional comments that they would like to bring forward. Go ahead, Gary, please.
Yeah, Eric, just want to say thanks so much for your service. It was great getting to know you. Did a great job leading as chair, and just wanted to say thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, you're here. Okay. Any other board members wish to?
Chair Schmidt, this is Vice-chair Dykeman. I also want to just extend my thanks to Eric. I am not incredibly steeped in code language, but try to do my best to represent buildings and general contractors on the board. Eric was you've always been available to help and answer questions and help me understand some of the nuances of code. And I really relied on your expertise over the years. So really do appreciate that. And thank you for your service and your partnership as we've worked together on the board.
My pleasure as well, Andy. Thank you for those kind words.
Yeah. And I just want to take a moment also and thank you, Eric. Your mentorship and getting to know you during our time together on the board, and certainly learning from you in your capacity as chair. And then as I was able to also assume this position as chair, you've been a great mentor. I think one of the things that's always impressed me about you is you show up and you've done your homework. You have really dove in, and you have such a wealth of knowledge that I think has been so helpful for this board and for building codes across the state. So thank you for everything.
Well, I really appreciate serving not only the board, but also the state of Oregon in that position. And I look forward to making the codes better for the safety of the people. And I really appreciate this warm welcome and the warm sending away of me as I was able to participate in the membership and as chair. The staff also has been very helpful along the way, and I've had many questions during the time that I served, where staff was able to help guide me in a way that would be supportive, especially some of the legal issues that were available. And because I'm not in that vein as an architect, it was important for me to get that kind of assistance. So I really enjoyed being a part of this team, and I think we all worked well together. Mr. Forster always brought to the table very good thought process, and always asked for those boundary conditions to be met. And with you, Gary, it's very helpful to see forward and making sure the procedures were correct. And Eric Schmidt, you have a way with being able to help us, guide us through. So all of us were really well. And I to be honest with you, Andy, you actually inspired me to become chair, because when we were on the committee, the board allowed you to lead that, and I just kept watching you as you did all that stuff. And I said, no, this is a really quick way of moving through it, but also giving a lot of respect. So just to let you know that was, I never actually mentioned that to you before, but that's something that came to me. So while you were talking now. So again, thanks very much for inviting me back today, and I hope the rest of the meeting goes really well. And I don't want to detain Mr. Forster from his class, so I'll go ahead and close here. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you again, Eric. And I hope you feel better very soon. And please take care of yourself. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. All right. We will move on now to public comment, and I will ask Pierre, the Sabah Policy Advisor, to see if there's any public comments that need to be addressed or open for the board.
Thank you, Chair Schmidt. Pierre Sabah, Policy and also the Division. As of this morning, we have received one request for public comment to the board from a Mr. Michael Anderson. Mr. Anderson, if you are here for public comment, please come forward and identify yourself now.
Thanks very much. I'll try not to detain Mr. Forster either, but my name is Michael Anderson. Thank you very much for the time. I'm a researcher for Sightline Institute. It is a regional sustainability think tank. Our basic agenda is we're trying to reduce energy use. And when people are able to live closer to one another, they essentially cut their energy use in half voluntarily. We think more people should be able to take that option if they want to. So I'm here to speak to you briefly about an item you may hear about in the next part of the agenda, the legislative passage of 3395. House Bill 3395 included a provision that gives some instructions for a project that this board and the staff is going to take on in the next year or two. So I wanted to make myself available to say, here's a little bit of the context. I'm happy to talk about it a little bit. I'm coming to you modestly as a student of building codes. It's not an area of my own expertise, but I can talk to you about the context of the bill. So the basic situation is the provision in 3395 includes looking at rules that would allow a single stair exit for somewhat larger apartment buildings than are currently allowed. Right now, you can go up to, I believe it's 3 floors with 4 units per floor, per stairwell in a structure. This would take a new look at that. The history of this provision in the code, as I understand it, and I hope folks here will be able to correct me if I'm mistaken, but in around 1980, a second egress was made part of the code as mandatory for larger apartment buildings. And then around the late 90s, sprinklers were added. And we never went back to reconsider the effects of the second staircase on building design. And so this movement to have this conversation came out of architects saying this is a very common building type around the world, specifically for small lot buildings, specifically for sort of a few homes clustered around a single staircase, often wrapped around an elevator. And because you can get 2 walls on these small buildings with a single unit, it's good for multiple bedroom units. It's a way to get more family size apartments into relatively small lots relatively efficiently. If we can come up with a way to do it safely, as has been done in many European and Asian countries, because they have much better fire safety records in the United States, we should do so. We should figure out what to do about that. It's inspired in part by Seattle, has had this code provision itself for a couple decades. And I think the intent, as we've discussed with Mr. Forster and Mr. Sandoval during the legislative session, perhaps others, is to look at how things are working in Seattle. What are the practices in Seattle? How can we learn from that and from the rest of the world, and hopefully replicate some of that if we can do so safely. There's similar processes queued up in Washington and California due to similar legislation in both of those states. I think Oregon is at the front of that queue. So I'm here to just make all this make you all aware of this context and say hello. That's all. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike from board members?
This is Vice-chair Dykeman. Michael, do you know if any of these provisions are on the docket at the national level, or are these being adopted at the state level first?
It's something that I know people are talking about, trying to start the process at the national level. And my understanding is that often it starts at a state level, and then the national wants to look at the conversation and the outcomes in the states if possible. So I think part of the idea is that we're looking at the data we have and generating more data by doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. Are there any other questions from board members? Okay. Thank you, Mike, very much for taking the time and presenting. Appreciate your time this morning. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, at this point in time, we will move to the structural program update and looking to check in with Mr. Rocco, the structural program chief, to provide any updates to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the members of the board. Tony Rocco with the division for the record. Just with the program update, like Mr. Chairman mentioned here, there's a couple of items on the agenda here to discuss with the board. So first, I wanted to update the board about our current errata document. So under the 22 iteration of the OSSC, we now have our live errata document posted on our commercial structures program webpage. It's a great document. We typically try to get that out within 4 to 6 months after the statewide mandatory implementation of a code. As you know, the 22 iteration has been mandatory statewide since April 1st. And so now we have that errata document posted. Big thanks to Laura from our team for getting it posted and working on maintaining version control. Obviously, that's critical when you're looking at a kind of a living errata document similar to what ICC does. That's the first thing to update the board on. Next, just a brief mention Mark Heiser and Kelly Thomas from our team, who are our energy code gurus, are starting the process of looking at updating Chapter 13 of the OSSC. As y'all know, that's the energy code provisions under ASHRAE Standard 90.1. And they have kind of kicked off their internal processes prior to bringing that to the Construction Industry Energy Board. So again, as you recall, that adoption process is directed through the SEEB board. And if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to reach out to Mark and Kelly. They're great resources, and they'd be happy to discuss it more. And of course, we'll keep this board looped in, as that process moves along. And again, that's for Chapter 13 of the current iteration of the OSSC. And then finally, this is more of just kind of a hot topic to note for the board, something, nationally that we're monitoring at our technical team level. With the expansion of electrical vehicle parking considerations, obviously it's been a topic of our legislature of late, and we've expanded, the infrastructure rules, for example, which enact ORS 4D-5417. We've been monitoring the national kind of concern or observation of electrical vehicle fires. And so right now, what we've seen is that the majority of these fires that are documented and published, anyways, that are available to us upon research, they have been limited to the vehicles themselves. They've been kind of isolated incidents. They weren't based on the actual chargers. The vehicles were the point of origin for these fires. But it is something that we are going to continue to monitor. Obviously, the building code has very limited application when you start talking about vehicles, but there are some pieces of the chargers, the infrastructure, obviously, for those chargers when they are serving a building and located on a building site. So we're just going to keep monitoring that. I just wanted to raise that for the board's awareness. Eric McMullen from our team, kind of a resident fire expert, is going to be the one taking the lead on monitoring all of those. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate the update. And I know locally our fire chief had brought this to my attention about some concerns starting to come up a little bit about electric vehicles and fires for those. So it's Steve, if you're able to hear us okay, I was curious if you're kind of hearing any of that in your circles as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and staff. It certainly is a significant issue throughout the country, throughout the fire service. There's just some congressional hearings on lithium battery and EV related fires that raised a lot of attention. There is a pretty extensive work going on right now in the 2027 IF international code process. I'm involved with several task groups, leading a couple of task groups. We're looking at actually creating a chapter specifically for batteries, consolidating all of it. There's not a lot coming in 2024, but there is a lot more that will be in for the 2027 codes, still in development. But there are certainly, I'm sure we have a significant stakeholder consensus kind of groups put together. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of changes, and that's something I think hopefully this committee can look at, potentially even bringing in some code changes early. But so a lot more to follow on that.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the update on that, and I will pass that along to the fire chief as well. Okay, and again, thank you, Tony, for the update. Any questions for Mr. Rocco on the updates that he's provided from board members? Okay, hearing none. Again, Tony, thank you very much for that update. Okay, next item is a legislative update. So Andy Boulton, Senior Policy Advisor with Building Codes Division, will provide an update on the recently completed legislative session. It was, just real short, nothing going on. So Andy, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chair Schmidt, and you nail it. I can go home.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Chair Schmidt, members of the board, I'm Andy Boulton. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor for the division. I'm here this morning to give you a brief update on the legislation from this last session. that impacts the division and that covers subject matter that falls, at least in part, within this board's purview. There's a full summary in the board packet of the past legislation that we were tracking that goes into depth on the bills that impact the division and the division's plans for implementing the requirements. Mercifully, I will not be taking you through a full summary point by point, but we'll be doing just a quick highlights of some of the areas. You can review the full summary if you'd like for more detail, and if you'd like even more detail, the full bill language of all the bills, as well as supporting documents and legislative histories, are available on the Oregon Legislative Information System website, also known as OLIS. I'll be pausing for questions throughout, but if it gets into specific detail on the language of a bill, I may have to take your question away with me and respond after, once I had a chance to review the text of the bill. Before I get started, any questions? Okay, good. Onward. First off, there was a set of housing bills. Increasing housing supply was a major theme of the session, and the primary bills that the legislature used to address this priority were House Bill 2001, House Bill 2889, and House Bill 3395. There's a lot going on in these bills, and it would be outside the scope of this update to go into full detail on everything in them, since most of it does not actually impact the division. The summary in your board packet will give you a better idea of the extent. And again, if you'd like to get even more details, the oldest page for the bills would be a great resource. Specific to the division, we've been asked to create a definition and rule of accessibility and visitability as they relate to housing, so that housing and community services can include the number of homes that satisfy accessibility and visibility standards in a housing production dashboard that agency will be creating. The division has been directed to consider updates to the Oregon Structural Specialty Code to allow residential occupancies to be served by a single exit in certain circumstances. This is the issue that the commenter was commenting on previously. The deadline for this consideration is October 1, 2025, which is conveniently the anticipated effective date of the next iteration of the Oregon Structural Specialty Code. So the division intends to include the recommendations for consideration in the normal code development and adoption process, and any proposed changes will come before this board for approval. Any questions on those housing specific provisions?
Any questions for at this point from board members? I think I'm okay at some point, I think in here, because I know you got 3395 as well, but curious, I know it's not in here and it wasn't passed, but 3414 was another one that I think, at least kind of what I'm hearing is just all that work is it's going to come forward to the next session. So I'm curious any kind of landscape you might think about just as we think forward to the short session. We know the governor's work about HPAC and things like that. Just kind of curious how that relates to Building Codes Division. I know Administrator Alana is on kind of, I think, helping facilitate that group. So I know it all kind of ties together.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the update here is mostly on the bills that have passed, but we're not anticipating that the work on 3414 is just going to go away. Like you say, we expect that it's going to continue, that sort of subject matter is going to continue to be worked on, and the division is engaging with DLCD on some areas in which they can work together.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Next up is House Bill 2727. This bill forms a work group to examine strategies for expanding early learning and care facilities in the state. One member of the work group is a representative from Department of Consumer and Business Services, and it'll be from the Building Codes Division with expertise in state and local building codes. And one of the directives of that work group is to explore any code barriers that might be present. Any questions related to 2727? Okay. Finally is House Bill 3409. This is the climate greenhouse gas emissions bill, and there's a lot going on in this bill. It combines 15 different bills that were present earlier in the session into one big one. But I'm going to touch on the areas that impact the division really quick here. The bill adds consideration of greenhouse gas emissions to the list of priorities the division must consider when executing agency actions. The division is directed to consult with the Environmental Justice Council when evaluating priorities that the division sets and actions the division takes to adapt to and mitigate the impacts of climate change. The division is currently exploring the best way to implement this consultation, but it will likely involve a regular check-in with the council on pending agency action in this area. The bill places into statute the reporting requirements that had previously existed in Executive Order 2004, and the division will continue to fulfill these requirements as it has since the EO was put into place in 2020. The division is directed to study the use of lower carbon building materials in the building code, and to this end, the legislature funded 2 additional positions with the division. The division also anticipates contracting with a third party to assist with the study. The Oregon Department of Energy was directed to develop energy performance standards for covered commercial buildings. The division has been directed to consult with the department on the energy performance standards. Any questions about the areas of 3409 that impact the division?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. That is the quick highlights of the past bills that are going to impact the division. Last chance for questions before I run away quickly.
Thank you, Andy. Any additional questions for Andy at this time? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate the thorough written update, and also I understand kind of having to get this into a little more brief oral, but yeah, thank you for all that work. Yeah, and all the continued work and the work as we go ahead.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's see. Looking at our typical agenda, we have no communications updates or appeals for this meeting, nor do we have any unfinished business for this meeting. So at this point, we will transition to new business that is before us. And so I'm going to ask Pierre to please introduce this item. And we have Chief Tony Rocco here available for any discussion, questions around the technical issues. And this is something that we are looking for a decision today of some kind of motion. We have a few options as it relates to that. But before we do that, this is a board review and approval of division's proposed amendments to the prescriptive basic wind speeds of the Oregon Structural Specialty Code. And with that, I will turn it over to Pierre Sabat.
Thank you, Chair Schmidt, members of the board. My name is Pierre Sabat, policy analyst with the division. This agenda item is to approve the division's to review and approve the division's proposed amendments to the design wind speeds of the OSSC. At the request of the division in 2022 and 2023, CPP wind engineering consultants collected and analyzed data for the identified special wind regions throughout Oregon and provided recommendations for updating the associated design wind speeds. These recommendations from CPP are captured in the associated tables and figures in the attached proposed amendments to the OSSC, and both the table, figure, and the reports from CPP are provided in your board packet today. Today's board meeting also serves as the rulemaking advisory committee hearing for the proposed amendments to the 2022 OSSC. Tony is here to answer any technical questions you guys may have. And yes, if there is a motion today, and any motion to approve should include a finding that the added cost, if any, is necessary to the health and safety of the occupants or the public, or necessary to conserve scarce resources. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Pierre. So let me first ask Tony, is there anything that you would like to kind of do as kind of a, technical run through the process that this went through in terms of bringing it before the board?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Tony Rocco with the division. So we're looking at really just common sense, just great code amendments. These are adjustments that increase accuracy, consistency, and predictability for basic design wind speeds in the state. This again is, as Pierre kind of summarized for you from the memo, this will impact the current 22 iteration of the OSSC. Section 16093 really doesn't modify section 16093, but obviously that's the hierarchy charge of how we get to the associated table 16093 and the associated figure 16093. So this modifies those. Jeremy Williams, our program engineer, has just done a fantastic job kind of compiling this information, putting it together, getting these amendments organized for you in the packet. And then also you'll see an illustrative figure that he worked on with Laura from our team that just does a great job of highlighting, the deltas, the increase or decrease in basic design wind speed. And the great thing is it's like a 99.9% decrease across the board, as you'll see from the CPP reports, which are also provided to you in the packets. And so really, I mean, we're looking at potential, cost implications for cost savings on projects throughout areas of our state. And this was also approved by the Residential Manufactured Structures Board at their meeting last week for inclusion in the 23 iteration of the ORSC. So we just got right in before the buzzer on that one. And so this would keep the codes aligned. And of course, you'd be looking at the risk category 2 column from the associated table for ORSC governance structures. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tony. Just a quick question again, wanting to make sure. So was, I guess as part of this work was there any conversations with the Structural Engineers Association as well?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there was. I mean, that's one of the things that Jeremy has done a fantastic job. He maintains some pretty regular communication with different committee members over at SEAO. And they are aware of this, and I think that they're anticipating it and looking forward to the opportunity, assuming that it goes through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's been a while since I've actually designed buildings as a licensed engineer, but I do remember the criteria in the past was it was vague. It needed more analysis, more of this. So I'm pleased to see this come forward. Okay, questions from board members? Okay, are we ready for a motion? And so the options, I'm not sure if the committee members have the options in front. If not, I'm happy to go through the options.
Chair Schmidt, I can make a motion.
Please go ahead.
Yep. This is Vice-chair Dykeman. I make a motion to approve the division's recommended code amendments and forward to the administrator for rulemaking and subsequent adoption, with the finding that the added cost, if any, is necessary to the health and safety of the occupants or the public, or necessary to conserve scarce resources.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. All right. So we have a motion. And I don't believe it requires a second, but I think we need to do a roll call vote on this. Am I getting that correct, staff?
You can do discussion before the vote, but yeah.
Okay. All right. Is there a discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. I guess, Pierre, if I could ask you for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair Schmidt. I believe Nathan will take roll. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nathan, please.
Stephen Forster.
Yes.
Gary Heikkinen.
Aye.
Marshall McGrady.
Aye.
Vice Chair Andrew Dykeman.
Aye.
Chair Eric Schmidt.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. All right. Thanks, everybody, for that. Thank you again to Jeremy, BCD staff, and all the hard work on this. And it's nice to see this in motion. I'm glad we were able to get this in for the upcoming residential specialty code as well. So thank you. Thank you all for the work on that. Okay, at this point in time, we will go to announcements. Are there any announcements that the board members would like to share? We're good to the order. All right, hearing none, I think we can go ahead and move towards adjournment. And so being no further business, The August 9th, 2023 Building Codes Structures Board meeting is now adjourned and the time is 10:19 a.m. So thank you all very much for your time today. Hope you're all doing well and have a great rest of the summer. And thank you, Steve. And hope you have a good class.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All
Bye,
right.
everyone.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Eric.
Thank
See
you.
ya.